All right, so how do we actually get into administering the self? And bear with me, we're going to do a couple different camera angles. We're going to start over here, and then I'm going to angle the camera in different ways. So hopefully we won't have too many hiccups. So like I said, you definitely need your stimulus book. And what I'm going to use for this example is I'm going to use form number 1. So let's pretend like we have a child who is actually 7 years old. So 7 years, let's say 7 years, 0 months, just to make it easy. So if you want to write that down, 7 years, 0 months is going to be our target kiddo. So if we look at our protocol, so here comes our first camera rotation. I apologize. We're going to come up and over here. Here's our first camera rotation. This would be the protocol that we would be using. So if we take a look at this protocol, the child is 7 years old. So we are going to be administering if we wanted to do the entire test. So let's say we need to know everything. We need receptive, expressive. We want to know everything about the child. We will be doing all of these subtests. Please note that the pragmatic profile actually is not going to be standardized. So that's more just for your interpretation section. That's more going just in for your own information. If you don't end up collecting it, it's really, it's okay-ish. You should always collect that. It's going to tell you a lot about the kiddo, but you aren't going to have a standard score. That's not going to be converted, just so that you know that. All right. But let's say you only want to know the core, so you don't need to know everything. So if you look down here, the core for this particular test for this age, you only need these 4 subtests. So you only need sentence comprehension, word structure, formulated sentences, and recalling sentences. And that's your core language. Or if for whatever reason, let's say you only need receptive language or only need expressive language, you would just come down here and you would say, okay, what are the subtests that I need in order to fulfill that? But let's just say for the sake of this example that we are going to collect every single subtest for this child. So we are going to open up our protocol, our record form here, and we are going to look, and here you will see that it'll say where to start. So if our kid is 7 years, 0 months, what we said, right? 7, 0. This particular kid is not going to start with item number 1 because they're too old. They're going to start with item number 8. And so that's where we will start. And in the Easel, you still give the trials. You're still going to do the demo. You're still going to do the trials regardless of the age. But once we finish these, then you pop down to the age. What's really great about the self, if you will notice right here, you will see that the reversal rule, the repetition, and the discontinuation rules are all right at the top, which is the same for every single subtest of this particular test. Really great. It tells you right up top what you are and aren't allowed to do. So you don't have to go digging for these. They're right here on top. So remember, reversal rule indicates your basal. So what is the lowest number that we have to go back to or start with? And then your discontinuation rule is going to be about your ceiling. So what is the highest the child can do? So if you look closely, what it says is that the reversal rule is that they have to get a perfect score on 2 consecutive items from their start point. So let's say our kid gets a perfect score. So a 0 would be a perfect score on these 2. They get a 1, or sorry, I just said a 0. A 1 would be a perfect score. I apologize. A 1 would be a perfect score. So they get a 1, they get a 1. We keep moving forward. But if on either one of these they get a 0, let's look at what the rule says. It says, if not, you go back to item 1 and test forward. So you would go all the way back to item number 1 and then continue to test forward. But if they got these wrong and they get these right, remember now we have to think about our ceiling rule. So our discontinuation rule or our ceiling are 4 consecutive zeros. So that would include any of their start point ones as well. So if the child got all 1s here and a 0 here, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be your ceiling. You would be finished with the test, with this subtest. And then you're going to record the raw score, which is the total number correct here. So if the child got all of these right and missed the next 4, that raw score would be 7. Also keep in mind, if the child starts here and gets these 2 right, and then you move forward, everything prior to that is going to be counted in the raw score as well. So you're starting, you would say, so let's say they get this one right, and then they get the next 4 wrong. This particular child would get a raw score of 9 because it is assumed that if they can get these, they would get these. And so anything prior to, anything in the age above is going to go in that raw score. All right, so let's do a little camera flip. So this is sentence comprehension. That's your record form. And we're going to have our record form, which is great. And then remember, like I said, you need the manual because your directions are in your manual. So sentence comprehension, this particular one actually starts on page 34. So if we're going to pop it down here, you can see page 34. And when you get to page 35, you will see here are where the directions start. So you are going to read what is in bold, and you're going to show them the pictures from the stimulus book. So let's turn the camera. So we're going to do a little rotation here. Turn the camera down. And let's look at our easel. So while you are showing the client this, you are reading from that manual. So the easel flips this way. So I want you to see this. The easel is going to flip this way. Actually, let me give us a little bit more light here. So hopefully that'll help. Sorry, it might be a little glary, but hopefully that'll help you be able to see it a little bit better. So here is the trial. So you will have the child or the adult. Sorry, here's the first one. I accidentally skipped a page. Here would be the very first one. And what you're going to read, this is exactly from the manual. I'm reading right from here, just so you know. I say, let's look at these pictures. I'm going to point to the picture that shows I can wear this. So this is a demo. So we're just demonstrating what we expect. So you're going to point to the picture. Remember, like I've said in other videos, you would want your record form back here and you want to angle yourself. So if you're left-handed, this would be a great angle for you. If you're right-handed, you just want to angle yourself the other way. But you always want your record form where the client can't see it, but you do want to kind of angle yourself on the side. So you want to have a view of this side, and you want to have a view with your protocol back here. So depending if you're left or right-handed, that will depend on where you want your protocol to, if you want it on this side, or it would be a different camera angle. This would be a really good angle for a left-handed person, not for a right-handed person, just so that you know. So we're going to demonstrate this one. The next one is a trial. So this one, we expect the client to do it themselves. So we'll say, let's try some more. Look at these. Point to the boy has a ball. And we're not going to point, we're not going to indicate, we're just going to show them the pictures and say, point to the boy has a ball. And if they don't get it, then we're going to say, here is the boy has a ball. Okay, then we'll go on to the next one. We're going to do another trial. So here we'll say, now, oh, I apologize. I made a mistake. This would actually be trial number 3. So we actually do a trial on this one as well. So there's a trial here. This would be trial number 2. And then trial number 3 would be here. So we do our trials before we start actually testing. Now remember, our kiddo is 7-0. So we are not going to start on item number 1. You'll see this is sentence comprehension 1. That's what the SC is. But our kid is over the age of 6. So our kid is going to start on page number 8. So one of the things I've learned, one of the things I say to my kiddos is I'm like, oh, because you're older, you get to start up back here. You're going to start up here. And this is where we're going to start you. And I'll have my kid go through this. One of the other little tips that I've learned is that if a kid gets it wrong and you do have to go back, instead of indicating that the kid has made a mistake or something's gone wrong, I will take blame for it. So what I'll say is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. We actually have to start over here. Oh, sorry. Let me find it. Let me find the page. We need to start right here. Oh, sorry. No, right here. We need to start right there. And don't worry, the one we already did, we're going to skip. And that's what I do to kind of get around it, to kind of help with kids so that they don't feel like they've done something terrible or they're making mistakes right away. And especially with my older kids, when I'm working with high schoolers, I really don't want them to feel like they're making mistakes right away. So I'll always just take the blame. I'll say it's my fault. So this is our protocol, this is our record, our easel, where everything's going to be. One other thing I'm going to show you before we go back to looking at like the raw scores, converting scores, all that kind of stuff. The tricks and tips of using this particular binder. I made this mistake years ago, the first time they switched from the CELF-4 to the CELF-5, and definitely embarrassed myself. So don't do it. Don't embarrass yourself. Let me show you how it works. When you get down here, so you're going to get into a word structure. That's your last one. And you're going to be going through, and you'll see here's the demo. Here's trial 1 and 2, trials 1, trial 2. Here's another demo. you'll do a demo with more demos, and you'll see you're flipping through word structures. And what's going to happen when you get to the end here, after you do the book and the swimming, the book, and the bird, you're going to see this that says, turn the stimulus book around to continue administration. You are literally turning the book like this. You're going to skip this page, and you're going to continue this way. That is literally what you're doing. So literally flipping the book. You're coming to this page, you flip the book, and you turn the page. And now what you'll see is this is the stuff we already did, is on that side. And now we just continue with this one. All right, with the demos, your demos for this one. And we're getting right into the rest of them. All right, and that's how this book works. And it'll even tell you, skip this page. You literally just gonna skip over that page. No big deal. And we're gonna start with something different here. All right, so hopefully that helps. So let's go back. So we're gonna come back up. We're gonna look at, we're gonna come back up to protocol here. A little camera flip and give you a little less light for this angle. All right. So once you have done that, you have gone through every single subtest. You've administered all the subtests that you need to administer, and you have all your raw scores. Remember, the number correct, including ones that you are allowed to skip because of ages. You're going to have the number correct, and that's going to get converted onto this front page right here. All right, so it's going to get converted here. So all of your raw scores are going to go right there. You record them all there, and what you will see is the next thing you need to do is convert those raw scores into scaled scores. So before you take them down and put in your overall and all that kind of stuff, you actually need to convert them first into a scaled score. So how do you do that? So the way you're going to do that is you're going to flip to the back of the manual. So remember, backs of manuals, that's where all of our scores are. So you'll see test scaled scores, it's Appendix A, and this starts on page 177. So that's where it's going to start. So note it's sideways. So we are going to flip it sideways and be very cautious here. Number one mistake I see people make is that they just don't read the top of charts, and so they end up in the wrong place. So remember, our kid is 7-0. So this is not where we need to be. So we need to flip and we need to find 7-0. So we're gonna find 7-0, which is the next page over. Here we go. And what you're going to see is this center portion. These are going to be your raw scores. So your raw scores have these ranges. They're going to get converted to scaled scores. So let's say our kiddo on sentence comprehension got that 9. So they didn't do so well. They only got a 9. So we're going to find 9 on here, and we'll see 8 to 10 right here. 8 to 10 is going to give that child a scaled score of 2. So that scaled score would go right here, a scaled score of 2. And for this particular one, we're going to pick our confidence interval. Do we think 68? We're not really confident in how the child performed. 90, we're pretty confident that what they gave us was pretty indicative of how they actually perform. Or 95, yeah, I'm really confident. What I saw in this kid is really consistent with my case history. It's consistent with what I've seen. So I'm going to use 95. So it'll be plus and minus 3. So if they got that 9, you would do a 3 right here. So write a plus or a minus a 3. And here, I'll actually just go ahead and fill it in for you. That should be helpful. So if they got that raw score of 9, they're going to have that scaled score of 2. We're going to do plus or minus 3. So remember, raw score of 9, scale score of 2, plus or minus 3. And we're going to write, we picked 95. So if we do plus 3, 3 plus 2 is 5. If we do minus 3, it would be -1. So this one kind of turns out a little bit wonky. And then on this particular one, we're only going to be able to get our scaled score here. So we have to go to a different chart to get our percentile ranks, our age equivalents, and other things. And I'll show you where those are. Give me just a second. But what we want to do is we're going to do that for every single subtest. So we're going to find the raw score, keeping in mind that they're ranges. And then what we will do is we will check and say, okay, What's this? The raw score. Convert that to the scaled score. So raw score is here. Convert it to a scaled score. Put that scaled score right down here. And you'll see once we have all of the scaled scores, we can convert those, or we can put those down here. So that 2 would go here, it would go here, and it would go here. And then you would fill in every single one of these. So whatever those scaled scores are, you're going to fill every single one of those in. And then you're going to add up the total number. So let's just say, I'm going to pop some numbers in here just to help it be a little bit easier when we go to a scaled score from a standard score from a scaled score. So let's say this particular kid we're just going to do core for this example. This particular kid, let's say they got a 4 here. Let's say they got a 4 here and a 5 here. This kid did not do well. Poor baby. We're feeling really bad for them. So you're going to add this up. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 plus 5 is 15. We have a sum of scaled scores of 15. Okay, so that's our sum of scaled scores. So now let's pop over to another chart in the book. So again, you're going to go back to your manual and you're going to pop over to another chart, because now what we need to do is we need to convert those scaled scores, so the core language scores, and index standard scores. We need to go from scaled scores to standard scores. And the beginning of this is found on page 193. But our kid is 70. So for our particular kid, we're going to go to 202 because that's our kid's age. Doesn't matter if that's not your kid's age, right? So what we're going to look here is sum of scaled scores. And our particular kid did not do well. This poor baby only got a 15. So remember, we only got a 15 scaled score, a sum of scaled scores. So we need to go down and we need to find, because remember, core language score. This is receptive, expressive. This is your language content index and your language structure index. We are only looking at the core language score right now. So we need to find 15. So let's go over here. We'll go to the next page over. Where is 15? And voila, here is 15. So this particular child got 15, which is going to give them a core language or index score or standard score of 64. And this one does have the percentile rank right away for you, which is 1. Okay, so we're going to do 64 right here. That's their standard score. And they have a percentile rank of 1. Again, we want to think about our confidence intervals. So let's do 95 again. We're going to stay consistent. We were confident on the top. We're going to stay confident on the bottom. And that's going to be plus or minus 7, right? So that 7's going to go right there. So now what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, my standard score is 64. So if I do 64 plus 7, that's going to be a 71. And if I do 64 minus 7, that's going to be a 57. So if I were to re-administer this particular test, oh, sorry, I should have put that up a little bit higher. If I had re-administer, I'm 95% sure that the kid would score between a 71 and a 57. All right, so that, and then you would do the same for every single one of these. So if you're doing your receptive language, your expressive language, so forth and so on, what is the sum? So the sum of those scaled scores, convert that to your standard score. Here it says core language and index scores. That's your standard score. Grab your percentile rank. And now let's move on. We can go to another chart. So let's take a look at a couple more charts, and then we will be all finished. So the next chart I want us to look at is our test age equivalence. So that starts on page 225. And for this particular one, what we're looking at are those raw scores again. So we're going back up to the top, back up to our raw scores. And on our kid got a raw score of 9. Remember, on sentence comprehension, they got a raw score of 9, giving them a test age equivalent of 4. So 40 would be our test age equivalent for this particular child. And you will do that for every single subtest. What was the score that they got? What was the raw score that they got? And we're going to get those test age equivalents. The last thing I want us to look at for this video is we're going to look at percentile ranks And these other ones we're not going to talk about for this particular video, but we'll talk about percentile ranks. That's going to start on page 229 for the SELF. And when you look at this, you will notice that these percentile ranks, there is just one page for this because these are already converted scores. So because they're already converted, you don't have to go to multiple places. So regardless of age, regardless of what subtests you gave them, it doesn't matter. And please do note that these are going to be based on the scaled scores, which means that's your subtest section. So up here, that's going to be your percentile rank because our standard score percentile ranks, remember, those were already for us on the other page. What's great is that oftentimes kids are pretty consistent. So a kid will get a 6 or an 8 on multiple subtests. And so you're just going to put that score in multiple times. And you'll see you actually do have the standard scores here, percentile ranks. You'll have this curve and the same score as well. We are just going to look at those percentile ranks. So our particular child, remember scaled scores, we're looking for a scaled score of 2. So for every subtest with a scaled score of 2, we're going to come across, and we have a percentile rank of 0.4. So 0.4 is going to be the percentile rank. So pretty low. We said this kid didn't really do too well on this particular test. So that's the last chart that I'm going to show you for this video, which is pretty great for you to see. The one last thing I do want to show you is just the inside of this particular protocol as well, or record form, whatever you would like to call it. Once you have all of your scores, your scaled scores and your standard scores, what you can do is actually convert them to this chart over here. So this particular kid we know got a 9. So we put a little dot here and we said that, oh, sorry, that's a REL score. I apologize. I made a mistake there. Sorry. They got a scaled score of 2, right? And we know that their score, their interval range, their confidence was 5 to -1. And so what we can do is put a 5, and then we're going to go all the way down to here. And we'd say this is the range if we were to give this test again. And we would do that for each one of these, really just to have a visual on this child. So remember when we saw like core language, they had a scaled score of 64. So you would put that 64, that dot right here. There's the dot right there. Let me try to see if I can make this a little darker. There we go. That should help. So as 64, the dot would go here. And your range is 71 to 57. So we do a little bracket, 71 all the way down to 57. And this is our range. And so what we can see is our kid is falling way out of the range of the normal range. So if you remember the bell curve, this particular section right here, this blue, is that center section of our bell curve. So remember, right in the middle is 100, but we give kids up to 115 and 85. So you can see, look, 115 down to 85. This is considered normal. Anything within here is typical for our children to be scoring. Anything above that would be above average. Anything below that would be below average. So we can see that our child is performing really below average, really hurting quite badly for this particular child. So I hope that helps. Hopefully that cleared up how we administer the SELF, how we score the SELF. If you have any questions or want any more information, just let me know, and I would be happy to answer that.